Good morning, Batuta, Shackleton and Darwin class. I hope you are all well. You've had an amazing week. You've done amazingly this term, and I hope you're ready to wind down after our lessons today and enjoy your half term and just relax. I know I'm looking forward to it. So today's date is the 22nd of May, 2020. I'd like you to have a go at writing the date in Roman numerals all by yourself today. And then I'd like you to apply reasoning to using formulae to help us solve some problems today. So that's our learning intention. So once you've written that down, we'll get started. As always, you'll need a pencil, paper, and your 5-minute timer, but you'll also need your thinking hat on, and you'll need your logic and method hat today. Okay, so make sure you've got them firmly fixed. Yep, looking good. And check. So for today's starter, I thought we could go over some multiplication, because it's a skill that we use so often, being able to do things mentally and quickly. So we need to make sure that we're always thinking of the easiest and most efficient way to help us solve a problem. So you'll see in the first row, these are all times tables that you should know. You should have covered those from all the way from year 1, and by about year 4, you should have been fluent with all of these multiplications. So if you're not, then that's something you need to keep working on. You must make sure that you know all of your times tables from 1 to 12 by heart. Okay? Then, if you look in row B, you'll see where you're using those skills and helping you to solve, and using them to help you solve a bit more complex multiplication. So I always say to my class, if you look at a multiplication that has quite large numbers in, then think about how you could simplify that to help you solve it in an easier, more efficient way. So for example, if you look at 6 times 18, yes, you could sit there and you could use a written method, but supposing you were in the shop and you needed to work that out mentally, are you going to sit there and have time to write that out on a piece of paper? No. And supposing you haven't got a phone with you, so you can't use a calculator. So the best way to work that out would be to look at the 6, and if you double the 6, you get the number 12. And if you halve the 18, you get the number 9. So if you double one and halve the other, do you think the answer will still be the same? Well, test it out. Yes, it will. So 12 times 9 is probably a lot easier to work out than 6 times 18, because you should already know your 12 and 9 times tables. So for row B, a lot of those questions there, you'll be able to use that type of skill to help you solve. Okay, looking at where you can double one number and halve the other to make it a lot easier. For some of them, it might just be a case of ignoring the 0 and just multiplying those and then making sure we put our 0 back on. And finally, for row C, you'll need to think about how you can partition the numbers to help you solve them in an easier, more efficient way, and then put them back together again. For example, if you're doing 6 times 19, it'd be easier to work out 6 times 10 and then 6 times 9 and then put those answers back together again. So I'll stop talking. I'd like you to set your timer and have a go at answering the questions. Excellent. Let's go through our answers. So answers shown on screen. I'm not going to go through row A because you should already know those. For row B, we know that 7 times 4 is 28, so we know that 7 times 40 is 280. We know that 8 times 16, that's a trickier one, but if we look at the 16, we can halve the 16. 8 times 16 is 8. So if we do 8 times 8, we get 64. And then if we do 8 times 8 again, we get 64. And then doubling 64 should be quite easy. So that's 128. 6 times 18. Let's double the 6 and halve the 18. If we double the 6, we get 12. And if we halve the 18, we get 9. 12 times 9 is 108. 18 times 4. Let's halve our 18 and double our 4. Half of 18 is 9. And double 4 is 8. 9 times 8 is 72. 5 times 24. So you'll remember when we did our lesson on kilometres and miles, and we talked about multiplying by 5. We said that it was best to multiply by 10 and then halve it. So 24 times 10 is 240. Half of that is 120. Now, of course, you can sit there going 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 40, all the way up until you've done it 24 times. But You could be there a while. Can you imagine doing that in the supermarket? People will be saying, excuse me, are you ready to pay? So you've got to try and always think of the most efficient and quickest ways to find the answer. And for 12 times 60, we'll do 12 times 6 and we get 72. So 12 times 60, 720. And for row C, 18 times 5. So 18 times 10 is 180. So 18 times 5 is 90. You might also have done that as 9 times 10. So you might have halved the 18 and doubled the 5 and done 9 times 10 and got 90. 4 times 15. So to do that, you could partition the number 15. Partition it into a 10 and a 5. What's 4 times 10? That's right, it's 40. And what's 4 times 5? Yep, you guessed it, it's 20. 40 plus 20 gives us 60. 3 times 18. We're going to double our 3 and halve our 18. So then we get 6 times 9. And you all know your 6 and 9 times tables, I'm sure. So 6 times 9 is 54. For 6 times 19, we're going to partition that number, 19, into a 10 and a 9. So 6 times 10 is 60, and 6 times 9 is 54. We add 60 plus 54, we get 114. Another way to have done that is to have done 6 times 20, so rounding up our 19 to a 20, and then 6 times 20, which gives you 120, and then remembering to take away the extra 6 that you added on to get 114. For 8 times 24, we can do 8 times 12, and we can just double it. So 8 times 12 equals 96, and if we double 96, we get 192. If you know that 8 times 25 is 200, because you know that there's 4 25s and 100, hence why when we're talking about 25%, we know we're talking about a quarter. So if you know 8 times 25 is 200, then you can just take away that extra, you've added an extra 1 onto each of those 24s to get 25. So you can just take those away, take away that 8 and get 192. For 12 times 11 times 10, 12 times 11 is 132, times that by 10, and you get 1,320. Well done if you managed to get those. Don't worry if you found some tricky. The ones in row C are quite challenging, but those are for those of you who are really, really confident with your times tables and really, really confident with calculations. It's just that extra push. You must, however, make sure that you are confident with questions like the ones in row A. You must, okay? So keep practicing them. And what I would say to do, and row B as well, to be honest, you should be quite confident with row B. So what I would suggest is that even in half term, it might be a good idea to just come back to this video, set the timer and see if you can beat your time from today. Okay, see if you can solve them even more quickly than you did today. So let's get started with our lesson today. So now let's go through some problem solving questions together and see if we can use a formula to help us find the answer. So Barney picks apples from his apple tree and then sells them in bags. He charges 35p per apple and 45p per bag. One bag can hold 10 apples. So I just want you to pause for a moment and think about what's the important information shown in that question. What do we need to know? Excellent. 35p per bag, 35p per apple and 45p per bag. One bag holds 10 apples. That's important. So we highlight the important information. Now, if we were to use a formula to help us answer these questions, how much does it cost to buy 15 apples? And how many apples are there when 2 bags of apples are sold for £7.20? What would that formula look like? Well, our formula would be something that shows that we know that the cost is dependent on the number of apples and the number of bags. And the formula would look like this. The number of apples multiplied by 35 plus the number of bags multiplied by 45. So that means if, say, we wanted to buy 15 apples, we'll need to multiply that by 35. But then we also need to think about the bags that we have to buy. So we're going to add that on too. If we were buying 15 apples, how many bags would we need if one bag can only hold 10 apples? That's right, we'd need 2 bags. So the 2 bags and the 15 apples, we'd need 15 apples multiplied by 35 and 2 bags multiplied by 45p. And that gives us the total cost. The same applies if we are trying to find how many apples we've bought when we bought 2 bags for £7.20, then we'd need to use the inverse. So we're still using the same formula. Now we've got our formula, but we're going to use the inverse. So thinking back to our function machine that we looked at last week, thinking about why we did it, I know lots of you found that lesson quite easy, and I'm glad you did, because then you can use it to help you answer these questions. Whereas if you did find the function machine tricky, then this is probably really, really tricky. So I hope you all did, and if not, then maybe keep practicing that before going on to these lessons. So using our inverse, starting from the output, we'd have to look at how much 2 bags would cost and subtract that from the output. Subtract it from £7.20, and then look at the inverse of multiplication is division. So then we divide that by 35p. So just as we just discussed, 15 apples times 35 gives us £5.20. 2 bags at 45p costs 90p. So the total cost would be £5.25 plus 90, which would be £6.15. Now, just as I said, if we wanted to find out how many apples were bought when we paid £7.20, we do the inverse. So first of all, we go backwards from £7.20. We're going to go to 2 bags times 45 because we actually know the value there. Whereas for the other area in brackets, we don't yet know all the values, but we can work with the area we do know the values of first. So 2 times 45 is 90p. So £7.20, and then we subtract 90p. And that gives us £6.30. Then we take that £6.30 and we need to divide that by 35. Then we get our answer, which is 18. So £6.30 divided by 35. And the best way to do that is to change £6.30 into 630 pence. And then you can use the bus stop method to do your division. Okay, £6.30 is the same as 630 pence divided by 35. So if we check our answers, your answer should be, just to clarify, for A, it will cost £6.15 to buy 15 apples, and for B, 18 apples and 2 bags sell for £7.20. Now, you don't have a partner there with you necessarily, but you do have other people in your household. So I'd like you to grab one of them, if possible. They may well be working and they may well say, actually, can I do it with you in just a moment? So that's okay. If they're busy, then have a go at trying to do it on your own. But if not, then try and go through this with somebody in your household, talking through how we could first of all find our formula to help us answer these questions, and then using that formula to help us work out how much 13 apples would be, what the cost would be if one bag can hold 10 apples, and how we can work out how many apples there are when 3 bags of apples sell for £8.48, just as we just did. So pause the video here whilst you have a go at working it out. Fantastic. So we're ready to go through our answers. 13 apples would cost £4.44, and there are 26 apples when 3 bags sell for £8.48. So well done if you managed to get those. Now let's have a look at another question that we can do together, and then you'll have a go at doing one on your own. So the base of Gethin's chicken coop is a rectangle. The length measures 2.5 meters and the width measures 0.8 meters. Calculate the area and perimeter of the chicken coop. So we have to think about what is the formula to help us find the area. So that's what we did just yesterday. It's length multiplied by width equals the area. To find the perimeter, it's length multiplied by 2 plus width multiplied by 2, or length plus width times 2. Because you know when we do the perimeter, sometimes we can go around and we can add them all up. If it's a rectangle, then we know we've got 2 lengths that are going to be the same and 2 widths that are the same. So that's our formula. Now we're ready to apply our learning to solve the question. We're going to have a go at calculating the area and perimeter of the chicken coop. We'll substitute the values that we already know in our formula. 2.5 and 0.8. We know those are the values that we're working with. So we multiply them together and voila, we have our area, 2 meters squared. Remember, when you're writing, you're doing the written method of multiplication with decimal numbers, make sure your decimals line up, okay? And then make sure you line them up in your answer as well. And then if there are zeros after, as in this case, then you know that you don't actually need that decimal there. Now to find the perimeter. Perimeter is length plus width times 2. So we do 2.5 plus 0.8 times 2. And we get our answer of 6.6 meters. Well done if you managed to get those. So just to clarify, our answers are shown on screen. And we'll do our last question together, which is another reasoning question but looking at shape. When placed next to each other, this equilateral triangle and parallelogram create a new shape. What is the name of the new shape? That's right. You probably read it on the screen, didn't you? It is a trapezium. So, important information there. If we're calculating the area of the trapezium, our important information is that the triangle is an equilateral triangle, which tells us what? What do we know if it's an equilateral? Yep, we know that all sides are the same length. And a parallelogram to create a trapezium. So now we know we've got a trapezium, but that trapezium could be split up into a parallelogram and a triangle. When placed next to each other, this equilateral triangle and parallelogram to create a trapezium. So if we're going to create the area, calculate the area, then we have to think about how we know we can find the area of a triangle and how to find the area of a parallelogram. So to find the area of a triangle, we do, remember back to our lesson yesterday, we do base multiplied by height divided by 2. To find the area of a parallelogram, we do base times height. If you think about it, a parallelogram is it could be a bit like a squashed rectangle. So it's just base times height. Then, once we've done that, we just add together the area of the triangle and the area of the parallelogram, and voila, we have our trapezium. So, now we can apply our learning to help us solve the question. So it's 8 times 10, this is for the triangle. We've got 8 multiplied by 10, base multiplied by height, divided by 2, and we get 40 centimeters squared. Now to do the same with the parallelogram. The parallelogram we know is 5 centimeters by 10 centimeters, so we do 5 multiplied by 10, which gives us 50 centimeters squared. When we put those two answers together, We're not finished yet. We need to do 40 centimetres squared plus 50 centimetres squared gives us 90 centimetres squared. Well done if you managed to get that. Now it's over to you. I'd like you to, just as we've just done, I'd like you to have a go at finding the area of the trapezium shown on screen. And we're ready to go through our answers. So the area of our trapezium is 106.5 centimetres. So we add together the area of the triangle, which is 24 centimetres squared, and the area of the parallelogram, which is 82.5 centimetres squared, and we get 106.5 centimetres squared. Well done if you managed to keep up with us. You're doing amazingly well. So what next? Two things. I'd like you to log into Kahoot and type in the pin shown on screen. So remember to go to www.kahoot.it and enter the pin and complete the quiz that I have set related to today's lesson. And then I'd like you to have a go at completing the reasoning using formulae, the worksheet which was sent to you this morning. Okay, you can also find it on our online learning tab. Remember to email us your work at yr6@grange.harrow.sch.uk. And on that note, I am signing out. But before I go, on behalf of all of your Year 6 teachers and educators, just to let you know that we miss you lots and we hope that you're making the most of this time at home. I know there's probably some days where you probably feel like you want to be back at school and you're missing your friends, and there might be days where you feel like you're happy being at home and you're just enjoying the time. But please try and make the most of this next half term and not having so much schoolwork, and just enjoy being a child. Have a great half term. Bye.